It's 9 o'clock. Good morning. You're watching Galaxy, the entertainment channel. We're very proud now to present for the first time anywhere on British TV a Doctor Who weekend.
Hello, I'm Debbie Flint.
And I'm Sharma Pereira. As you can see, your daily entertainment news programme 31 West has time travelled to the weekend.
It said 31 Who.
Which?
The title said 31 Who.
What? Oh, I went all funny then.
Probably something to do with this.
Oh, do you reckon there's anyone inside it?
A Time Lord, maybe?
Maybe Doctor Who, even.
Oh, no, not Doctor Who. Not even a Time Lord. Not even a hideous alien monster. I'm John Nathan Turner. I'm the former producer of Doctor Who, and I'm here for BSB's Galaxy Channel Doctor Who Weekend.
So we're in safe hands, then?
Indeed. Are you looking forward to it?
Yes, very much. Are you?
I am. So welcome to 31 Who.
Yes, the TARDIS has landed in the studio at BSB and taken over the Galaxy Channel.
31 Who lasts the entire weekend. We begin at the beginning with the very first episode as the TARDIS, transformed into a police box, visits Britain in the mid-20th century.
In fact, we're showing 10 complete adventures from Doctor Who, the world's longest-running science fiction series. It's been going for 27 years now.
But the Doctor Who Weekend is more than just a collection of stories. We've invited stars, past and present, technicians of all kinds, Dalek makers, costume designers, radiophonics engineers and many more. Here's a taste of what's to come.
Have you ever thought what it's like to be wanderers in the fourth dimension? Have you? What's the matter?
Look!
Come on!
But we know that there are survivors. They must be disgustingly mutated, but the fact that they have survived tells us they must have a drug that preserves the life force.
Are we going back to the TARDIS now? No. We must stay here and see what is happening.
The TARDIS can go anywhere.
TARDIS?
Have you taken us back to our own time?
No, I can't do that. Please be reasonable. What?
You must take us back, you must.
Doctor! Over here! What is it, Chester? We really must get back. It's fascinating.
And there's plenty more where that came from. Now, our first guest of the weekend appeared in that very first episode way back in the autumn of 1963. They're the good doctor's granddaughter, Susan, played by Carole Ann Ford, and Mr. Ian Chesterton, the science teacher, played by Russell Enoch, who became an unwilling passenger aboard the TARDIS as it launched on its first adventure. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
I'm
Hello.
intrigued how you both got the parts. How were you chosen?
Who first?
Carole.
You first. Me first, oh, all right. Well, I was actually in the studio doing something called Man on a Bicycle, another play. And I was actually screaming a hell of a lot in this particular play, you know, as is my wont. And unknown to me, up in the control box were Waris and Verity. Oh. And they were, at the time, looking for a possible Doctor Who girl.
Who would be a screamer right from the start.
I imagine that's what they were looking for. And there it was, handed them on a plate.
Russell, what about your part?
Well, my story is much more conventional. I was simply rung up by Verity Lambert, and I went down to see her at the television centre. We had a chat, and that was it.
And that was its simple story?
Very simple story, yeah.
Now, Carole, you only thought it'd be 8 weeks long initially, didn't you? What was your reaction when you found out it'd be longer?
Amazement, delight.
Were you pleased? Did it work for you, though?
Well, it didn't. I mean, I loved doing it. It was very exciting, and it was a great sort of family feeling. We all got on very well. It was very nice. But I would have been happier if my part could have been developed a bit more. You know, she was only 15. She wasn't allowed to have a love interest. And
Shame at 15, eh?
well, I mean, she wasn't allowed to grow older, you see. This is the thing. And, of course, when you are... I mean, I'm sure all the other people you'll interview will say the same thing. You know, when you are the central character and the girl, then you do tend to land on the planet, meet a monster, scream, run off, in my case, twist my ankle.
And that was it.
And that's it.
And Russell Enoch, you weren't Russell Enoch then, were you?
No, I was acting under the name of William Russell then.
Right, so that's
right.
who we'll recognise when the titles roll up. Thanks very much for joining us today, Sharma.
Well, you can recognise who I'm with. Now, the idea for Doctor Who first came from Sidney Newman, who was the BBC's head of drama, and he appointed Verity Lambert to be the first producer of the programme. She's since become something of a giant in the film and television business, responsible for series like Minder. As Debbie found out when she met her last week, it was her first job as a producer, and she turned a science fiction drama into a smash hit.
The first young woman was his granddaughter, actually, and she was at school. And she was rather precocious in certain ways, because, of course, she knew a great deal more in certain areas, but she still was a teenager, if you like.
I'm not trying to be rude, but...
Her school teachers, the two school teachers who taught her, got very worried about her, and they followed her back to this junkyard where this police phone box was, and they followed her in, and, of course, the doctor was furious, and so they all took off. So for the first sort of 18 months, I guess, these two school teachers were also on the trip. And of course, when we started, the TARDIS went backwards and forwards in time, so sometimes some of the episodes were in the past, as opposed to being in the future.
And they were based on fact?
They were all based on fact. So we did things like the French Revolution, and we did one on Marco Polo, which actually Waris directed.
What other early decisions were you responsible for?
Well, we made a decision, which was actually really because of money. Originally, the TARDIS was supposed to change its exterior shape so that it blended in wherever it was. So we found it as a blue police box in England in the 60s, but it was supposed to change into whatever, wherever it went. But that was terribly expensive. So we made a decision just to keep it as the TARDIS, that whatever made it change its shape had gone wrong, or the doctor didn't know how to work it. So it always remained as a police box, which actually I think was a terrific advantage, because there was this rather incongruous police box sitting in the middle of the first episode in sort of caveman time in the middle of a desert.
It's still a police box. Why hasn't it changed? Dear, dear. How very disturbing.
What happened with the first Dalek series was that the first 4 episodes of Doctor Who went out, and it was so odd, and nobody really knew how to take it. And the BBC, people within the BBC got a bit nervous and said, this can't go on for a year, it's not going to work, we must do only 13. And I think the first Daleks was 7. We loved it, but Donald Wilson, who was head of the serials department, hated it. And he said, well, you can't do this, it's absolutely terrible. We didn't have another serial ready to put in, so we had to go ahead and do it. And of course it was an enormous success, and nobody ever talked about cancelling Doctor Who ever after that.
I should think not, and they both look as young, don't they? Another key role at the beginning was held by the first director, Waris Hussein, who, curiously, was not brimming over with enthusiasm for the new series. He's now a successful filmmaker in America and in Britain. When we caught up with him, we asked him to cast his mind back 25 years or more to those first days of Doctor Who.
Well, the first episode came into being because Sidney Newman, who was the new head of drama at the BBC, wanted to find a new way of doing programs for kids. And he decided that there would be this strange man who lived in a phone box, which once you went inside would become a spaceship. That was the original premise. It was literally old man, phone box, spaceship.
Feel it, you feel it?
It's a faint vibration.
It's alive.
It's not connected to anything, unless it's through the floor.
Look, I've had enough. Let's go and find a policeman.
Yes, all right.
The children's department at that time was very traditionally run, and the people who were involved with that were very apprehensive about this new thing. And I think they gave it about 6 weeks of life. I can't say I was a very willing director on this. I was kind of press-ganged as a contract director into doing it. So in some ironic way, I certainly didn't know that I was in on something that was going to be this well thought of and indeed this long-lasting.
She is in there! Close the door, please! But Barbara!
We had this incredible business of trying to get them from the exterior scenes into this phone box, looking as if it was all right to open a couple of narrow doors and walk into this vast space.
Close the door, Susan.
In the first episode, we had this story took place in the cave ages and people looking for fire. And the villain and the hero figure both have this incredible fight with clubs and a lot of grunting. I encouraged the actors to fight fairly violently. We had a fight arranger. Anyway, in the end, this man crushes the villain's head out of camera, and then I actually cut to the results of what had happened, which is fairly gory. And Verity absolutely refused to let me use the shot and reminded me this was for kids. And it was only then I had to sort of get drawn back into the reality of what we were actually making this for. It was for children. So we cut out this sort of very gory, mangled mess that I had shot. A lot of people have forgotten the first episodes. No one even realizes I was the first director. And in fact, the BBC even forgot. They had a celebration about 5 years ago where they had a reunion of all the actors and directors. And I wasn't even invited until I found out it was happening, and I invited myself. I was stopped at the door by someone saying, have you got an invitation? I said, I sincerely hope so. Even if I haven't got one in my hand, I should, because I was the first person to start this thing off. So that's how long it's been running, and I don't think the BBC knew, actually, what sort of show it had on its hands.
Well, we haven't forgotten him, and it's amazing, you know, because by a miracle of time travel and television, he has joined us here. Welcome, Waris Hussein. Are you looking forward to this weekend of Whoism?
I am. I'm going to be looking at things that I'd forgotten about.
You haven't seen for years and years and years. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll be talking to you again later, and also to Carole Ford and Russell Enoch. So we shall look forward to more tales from Who.
Well, after the break, we have the first Doctor Who story ever, entitled An Unearthly Child. This story was first transmitted on television the day after President Kennedy's assassination, almost 27 years ago. Even now, the first episode is a supreme example of vintage science fiction. So stay with us and cast your minds back to 1963 and witness how a legend was born.
Again, that very first story, An Unearthly Child, grabbed the imagination of the viewers. But it wasn't until the Daleks made their menacing way onto the screen that the programme picked up a massive and dedicated audience.
We'll see the Daleks' first appearance in 10 minutes, so it gives us a chance to find out how the Daleks began. So welcome again to Russell Enoch, one of the early companions, who first struggled with the Daleks way back in 1964. And also a big welcome for the companion who came top of the fans' top 10 companions list, Elisabeth Sladen. Quite an accolade, that.
Thank you. I'd like to be totally modest, but I'm absolutely delighted.
Now, what were your experiences with Daleks? Elisabeth first.
Well, I think the first time that I really remember the Daleks was with Jon Pertwee, and they're meant to be so totally and utterly menacing. I mean, we were in a sand quarry, I forget where, and they had to put rails down for them because they couldn't trundle along on the sand. They weren't quite as menacing as they should be. And they had to turn a corner rather sharply. And they were coming along at a good lick, and all of a sudden they started to very slowly just go over, right into the sand.
Terribly menacing.
So, very, very.
Russell.
Well, my story really is a more gentle story because my eldest daughter, Vanessa, had been able to watch them. the Daleks from home, you see, and she'd become terrified, so she used to hide behind the sofa, and when the Daleks came, she disappeared, you see.
Oh, bless her.
And one day I said, well, you know, they're really not that frightening. You must come to the studio and meet Bill, and you can meet a Dalek, you see. And so she met the Dalek, and first of all, she met it with the top on. And that was very scary.
Yeah.
But then I said, could you lift the top off? And she actually sat in the Dalek. So I've got a rather charming picture at home of my daughter, who was then very young, sitting in the Dalek, in a Dalek, with Bill and myself and Caroline. And
never frightened of Daleks again?
Never frightened again, no.
Now, the Daleks were originally created by Terry Nation, their chilling cruelty, their robot technology, ensuring them lasting popularity. Terry Nation, now a Hollywood writer and producer, and the early production team had no idea the Daleks would become one of the landmark creations of science fiction. Our Los Angeles producer, Irene Levin, caught up with him.
I had grown up in the cinema, at the front row of the Odeon all my life, practically. And I used to love what were then rated H pictures, horror films. And there was the Mummy and the Frankenstein monster and all of those things. And even though I thought they were wonderful, I always knew that the monster was a man dressed up. And so when I came to make my own monster, I wanted to make sure that it was not a man dressed up. Now, anything you can do with that, I think, is to take the legs off. When I wrote that first block of Dalek episodes, I worked on the assumption that this was take the money and fly like a thief. The show cannot last beyond its original 13. I mean, what a dumb show, I said. And so I killed them off, knowing that there would be no future for these guys. Then I figured, we had to get them back. And I felt a bit like Conan Doyle trying to get Sherlock Holmes back from the Reichenbach Falls. But then it occurred to me that we were moving through time. So what we saw was the ultimate end of the Daleks, and now we could go back and see other things that they had done in time, which justified it for me, and I think everybody else, but we finally didn't care too much, you know. I think they had a voice that you could imitate, I think you could glide around, and I think they were bad. They weren't grey, they weren't nice bits about them, they were bad guys, and I think everybody could relate to that. Doctor Who and the Daleks probably helped science fiction enormously. I mean, science fiction was a dirty word. It was sub-literature at that time. It has introduced kids, to good science fiction, who then went on to read the great writers of science fiction. It's now certainly science fiction is a bigger part of our culture than it ever was when we came on the air. So I think it's very valid to say we did make a contribution.
Our prisoners are intelligent and perhaps dangerous. Why not exterminate them?
I have a great pride in the fact that the word is in the dictionary, that I created these creatures, that they still exist. And I suppose everything surprises me, but now it's that they've been a part of my life for so long that I can't think of my career without them.
I am the master.
They're really scary in black and white, aren't they? Now, just in case you aren't familiar with the full range of horror displayed by the Daleks, here's an example of how they relentlessly pursue their enemies to the ends of the universe.
Our greatest enemies have left the planet Zeros. They cannot escape. Our time machine will soon follow them. They will be exterminated, 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 exterminated.
And are they still out there seeking the good doctor? Almost certainly. Well, with me now is designer Raymond Cusick, who was responsible for putting the flesh, or rather, putting the hardboard on the Daleks way back when, in 1963. Ray, what was the brief like?
Very brief. About 4 lines in the script. They had an eye on a stalk. They moved about with any apparent feet. So what I did was to telephone Terry Nation, the author, and discuss it with him. And that was still very brief. So it was really thinking cap time, really.
Well, I think you did a wonderful job. I did hear that you actually designed the innards of a Dalek as well.
Not for the programme. It was editorial policy not to show the Dalek itself. The idea being, well, twofold, really. They didn't want to frighten the children, because it was meant to be a family-type programme. And also, they thought that if you imply horror, your mind will fill in the rest, not to show horror in full, as it were.
Now, I know we do actually see one version of a Dalek's innards in the story that we're going to see a little later today. But you have actually written a book about your early time on Doctor Who.
I collaborated on a book, yes. Doctor Who in the early years.
Right, we'll have to leave it there, Ray. After the break, we have the first 3 episodes of a 7-part adventure which turned Doctor Who into an overnight success with more than 8 million viewers. And for those of you who remember with affection ITV's Robin Hood, watch out for Alan Wheatley, alias the Sheriff of Nottingham, who plays the leader of the Thals. So stay tuned for the Daleks.
Hello, the Daleks, the first monsters created by Doctor Who to become a phenomenal success.
Yes, they were immensely popular with the public, and the Daleks hooked an audience of more than 8 million viewers and ensured the success of the series for years to come.
But we take a breather from this story now as we explore some of the things that go to make up the popularity of the Doctor Who series and the obsession of the fans who follow it.
Yes, next we have for you a rare American documentary, Doctor Who's Who's Who, and here's a chance to meet no less than 4 doctors.
After the last hour of diving into Doctor Who mania with plenty of behind-the-scenes revelations, it's time to return to the Daleks story, which of course was first transmitted 27 years ago.
If you remember, we'd just had 3 episodes of this story in which the Daleks made their very first appearance when we took a breather for Doctor Who's Who's Who. Well, the Doctor and his crew have captured a Dalek and removed its inner workings. Ian has occupied its shell and is masquerading as a Dalek, not realising that what they've removed is...
That was a fabulous piece of television history there as the Daleks made their dramatic debut. And 2 of the Doctor's companions, Russell Enoch and Carole Ford, are with us again now. Had either of you any idea of the impact that that story would have on the viewers? Carole?
Absolutely none, no. And when we saw these strange creatures, we thought they were terribly funny.
The Daleks?
Yes, we didn't think they were at all frightening, wasn't it?
What about you then, Russell?
Yes, I think because, of course, they didn't have their tops on
Yes.
when we saw them. So we saw the actors sitting in the Daleks, peddling them around the studio. So that was very comic.
It wouldn't be very frightening, really, would it?
But when they put the top on and filmed it, it was...
And it was the
scary.
voice, wasn't it?
And it was the combination of the voice, Peter's voice, with the Daleks. Yes, I think those 2 things added it up.
And the Daleks were supposed to be the thing that all of a sudden brought all this attention to Doctor Who. Did you both find that, briefly?
Oh, yes. That's
Very
certainly
much so,
true.
yes,
Absolutely true.
And
Yes, I mean, I can remember going out and buying an Evening Standard and finding a cartoon of General de Gaulle as a Dalek.
Oh, really?
And when I saw that, I came in to see
Well, if
Bill
that
and
doesn't
said, well,
say
that's it. That's
yeah,
it.
if that doesn't say it, nothing does. Thanks. Now, John, what's next?
Well, we've got a fascinating 2-part story now, which features just the 4 members of the original regular cast. And it's set entirely aboard the TARDIS. And this time we learn a great deal more about the Doctor in this adventure, as up to now he's been very much an enigma. It was written by the series' first script editor, David Whittaker, and first shown in 1964, The Edge of Destruction.
Welcome back. Now have we got a major treat in store for you. Sadly, not every Doctor Who story was kept on tape, and many were lost. Among those most missed by fans were the stories involving the Yeti monsters. Just a couple of episodes remain, and we'll show those in a few minutes. But with us now is the writer and creator of the Yetis, Mervyn Haisman. Mervyn, where do the Yetis come from?
Well, Tibet, really.
But, I mean, inside you, what inspired the Yeti idea?
Well, the idea of a monster that initially looked very cuddly and friendly and had this fearsome force when turned on by the intelligence.
Well, I know the Yetis were one of my favourite creatures in Doctor Who.
Really?
I thought they were very cuddly. But it's very sad that these episodes have got lost. How did it happen?
I think the BBC was going through a time of penny pinching and just wiped some of the tapes.
And how many are left now? Just 2?
Just the 2.
How does it make you feel as a writer?
Very sad.
Are they kind of one of your favourite creations?
Well, yeah, they are. I managed to see one a little while ago, and I looked at it and I thought, hey, that's not bad.
And what else was it about the Yetis, though? I mean, I can't remember them that well now because we've lost all the episodes. Tell us some of the things that we've lost.
Oh, gosh, well, you had the Padmasambhava, a lot of the wonderful characters, Tomney, as I say, Padmasambhava, they've all gone.
Among your favourites?
I think Wolfe Morris as Padmasambhava was a lovely character.
Well, I think JNT here has now got the details of what's going to come on next, haven't you?
Yes, I have. We're going to move forward now to 1967 for what we're calling the Yeti Rarities. First, we have episode 2 of a 6-part story about the Yeti, another of Doctor Who's classic monsters. Sadly, as we've said, that's all that remains of this story, which was junked many years ago. Now, the episode we're going to see was returned to the archives by a private collector to whom we're eternally grateful, and it's the first time it has been shown since its original transmission. Now, also watch out for companion Deborah Watling's father, Jack, as Professor Travers in The Abominable Snowmen. Well, for those of you who are dying to know what happened at the end of The Abominable Snowmen, the Doctor manages to immobilize the Yeti, who are, in fact, fur-covered robots. And he defeats the great intelligence who's controlling them through the body of the High Lama. And yes, Professor Travers does find a real Yeti in the end, and it's harmless. Well, joining me now is Nicholas Courtney, who for many years has played the Brigadier in the programme. Nick, we're about to see your first story, The Web of Fear. Happy memories?
Yes, except I wasn't in the first episode. I think the Colonel, as he was then, rather than the Brigadier, appeared in episode 2, as I remember. And I also remember that Debbie and the Doctor, and Fraser, are very suspicious of this man. They kept on saying, who's the Colonel? So I appear to be rather sinister to start with. Of course, it ends up that someone playing my sergeant is the great intelligence, and who is the villainous character. But I also remember about The Web of Fear, which Douglas Campion directed. It was all set in the London Underground, and
the sets are rather impressive, I think. I was looking
the sets were very good, and it was done in Lime Grove, and so carefully had Douglas done it that he shot them from different angles that London Transport rang up and said, how dare you film in the London Underground without our permission? But in point of fact, we hadn't, in point of fact. It was rather clever camera work and extremely sort of intelligent use of the camera.
Well, marvellous. Let's have a look at it now. Time now for episode 1 of The Web of Fear, the only remaining episode. And do watch out again for Jack Watling as Professor Travers, though his character has aged somewhat.
Welcome to our 31 Who special on Galaxy's Doctor Who Weekend.
In the next half hour, we celebrate the massive following that the programme Doctor Who has around the world. Indeed, for some fans, their enthusiasm seems to have carried them through time and space to other worlds altogether.
But wherever they were, we sent film crews to find them, whether in far-flung America or at an otherwise ordinary school in Abingdon.
Our special guest, a treat for fans and Galaxy viewers alike, include the current Time Lord.
We've a Doctor Who quiz, so you can pit your wits and knowledge of Doctor Who against our experts, who include our own companion, Jon Nathan Turner, the man who produced Doctor Who through the 80s.
Well, I've been doing a little bit of swatting here, but I just hope I answer one or two right.
And no cheating either. But first, our guest today is the current Good Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. Welcome to you. Now, Doctor Who conventions, of course, are becoming ever popular. What are they like?
Well, do you really want me to tell you right now?
Just a little bit.
Well, they're kind of a weekend where people dress up and fantasize and live their fantasies.
And you can see lots of Doctor Who's all around the place. Lots of you. Should like the next bit anyway, Sylvester. Sharma?
Yes, because the Doctor Who fan network extends the world over, even to countries where it's never been televised and is only available on video. In America, as you might expect, they do things bigger. And when they organise conventions, Doctor Who fans descend in large numbers.
Welcome to Concord, California, and Unicon 90, our annual Doctor Who convention.
Doctor Who is a major obsession in the US, with conventions attracting up to 5,000 fans. Even a small one like this takes some organising.
Unit 16 today. We're breaking up at the photo session. They'll be going out to their talks and everything.
Unit 15, this is Unit 18.
Unit 15 clear.
And this being America, everyone's important. The senior steward glories in the title of Supreme Commander.
Base to Unit 1.
Base to Unit 1.
Everything's going A-OK, everything's going A-OK. Unit 1 to base. This is John Levine trying to get more camera time.
Hold on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the John Levine soiree. I didn't know I was this popular.
The 600 fans attending Unicon 90 have a choice of tried and tested entertainment.
So now you know we work
Talks by stars of Doctor Who like John Levine.
And anything to do like Doctor Who was a wonderful thing to be involved in. And there were so many funny aspects of it, obviously.
Huge amounts of magazines, memorabilia, photos, and generally anything connected with the Who phenomenon.
Should I have a picture? It's amazing. That was only taken literally a week before time come.
3 of the big names from Britain have turned out this year. Terry Nation should have been the top draw, but couldn't make it due to illness. In fact, it's the very Britishness of it all that appeals to these American fans.
It's the English flavor to it that really makes it, really adds to the fun. It's got that touch of whimsy to it in many cases that I personally am fond of, being a fan of British movies and comedies and so forth. And to me, it's also, I think one of the reasons I think it's fun is because they're able to pull so many ideas or twists on old ideas out of the hats on what could have to be the most incredible odds against succeeding that you can imagine. I mean, this is they always say Star Trek is the show that wouldn't die. Doctor Who is the one that really deserves that credit. I mean, 26 seasons or 26 years, that is quite a record which has not been matched yet.
Hey, John.
Many of the fans here are younger than the show itself. Claudia Castro is just 20 and a prime example of what makes US fans different. Their overwhelming compulsion to dress up.
Costumes, you see costume contests. Some of the costumes are absolutely unbelievable. The inventiveness that people put in, sometimes with almost next to nothing to play with. And they come up with some of the darndest things you've ever seen.
Well, you might say I am the 7th Doctor. I would say the most fashionable incarnation yet.
This is my interpretation of the Master, if the Master were a female.
Nyssa from Keeper of Troughton.
Oh, this is the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker. I found the coat almost as it is and made a few alterations in it. As a woman, if you want to dress up as a doctor, you don't have a lot of choice. And also I knit, and so this was a, an easy costume to put together for me.
Well, from what I could tell, she wore red shoes, blue nylons, and had a 3-colored skirt that was red, blue, and yellow. These aren't the exact colors, but they were as close as I could get.
I did make a vest for my sister. She sometimes dresses as Peter Davison, the 5th Doctor. I made a cricket vest for her.
I guess watching Doctor Who and getting involved with the show has given me a whole new identity, one that's certainly more exciting than my usual one.
Well, Sylvester McCoy is here. Sylvester, you go to these conventions all the time. Now, as the current Doctor Who, you must get mobbed.
Well, yes, it is an extraordinary experience. I got the job once on a Monday. On a Thursday, they flew me to Atlanta, Georgia. And there was I, who they'd never heard of before, suddenly being blinded by flashlights and everyone grabbing me, wanted to know every ounce of history that I had about myself. Very extraordinary experience.
Is it quite frightening? Because they're terribly keen and quite obsessive, aren't they?
Well, yes, but it's not frightening once you get used to it. I mean, after a while, you start to enjoy it. I mean, being a performer myself, I suddenly realised, here's a captive audience. They actually like me before I arrive. So I go out there and just kind of rabbit away and do a kind of a stand-up comedy show for them. Not as Doctor Who, but as Sylvester McCoy. Because they want to know me, because they see me on the telly, but they want to know the real guy behind it all.
But do you walk in and they're all wearing your hat and they want Sylvester
Yes.
McCoy workshops and things to find out how to be a doctor?
Oh, yes, yes, they all do. I mean, the most extraordinary one I went to was, I went to one in Scotland, and being a Scot, most of the people are turned up for a Doctor Who convention, they're dressed as myself. Lots of them in other various countries dressed as the various favourite doctors. But there, all of them turned up. And I remember coming down, it was in Paisley, the art, it was the big imposing building. I came down these stairs, dressed in civvies. I looked behind me, I looked across the road, this lady was pushing a pram. She double took, couldn't believe it, because behind me were hundreds of me. And I found that really, you know, amazing and extraordinary.
Is it part of your job description to go to these conventions, or is it something you do for love?
Well, I think it's part, I mean, it turns out to be part of the job, but you actually do enjoy it. It's, I mean, to be adored, you know, for a weekend is rather nice.
And is it like making a personal appearance? I mean, do you actually get paid for it, or do you just get your sarnie and the bus ticket?
Oh, you get the sarnie and the bus ticket, and, like, you know, a bit of luxury living in the hotels they stick you up in and all that, and they fly you out there, and they're really nice and to you, you know.
Well, we're going to find out in a minute about the British conventions, I think, aren't we, Debs?
And the fans, indeed. That sounds like great fun, doesn't it? Now, on this side of the Atlantic, Whovians are just as active with their own fan magazines and conventions too. One such enthusiast is Andrew Beach, by day an awfully sensible solicitor, but in his free time he is without equal. When he gets home at night after work, he's transformed into a superfan.
There's a number of things. I personally am involved in the convention side of it, where we have various events where we invite people along to play silly games, discuss the programme, interview them generally.
He turned round, the door opened, and probably a Dalek came in and shot him. And that was his part on Doctor Who.
The Society recently did some research into who was popular at conventions. Doctors are definitely the #1 favourite, followed by companions. And then supporting artists. It's mainly the actors that people out there tend to go for, which I think is slightly a shame, because very often it's the supporting people, the people who play the monsters whose faces are never seen.
And it was also mentioned that the part of the cyber leader was going.
The programme's been going for 30 years. It's been done in a variety of different styles, ranging from comedy through action-adventure to drama to horror. And you just can't compare it. I mean, it's been the fact that it can completely change its style that has kept it fresh and interesting for generations of viewers.
And Andrew Beach is a contestant in our trivia quiz later on, when one of the specialist subjects will be Sylvester McCoy. Can you believe it? You are. What do you think about these fans, then? You can't tell them from their outside appearances, can you?
Tell them what?
You can't tell that they're so fanatical.
Well, I don't know. Yes, I'm delighted that they are. I think it's rather good, really, because not only is it just people dressing up, but what it does is people write, they create magazines, they get into drama. In a sense, it's an excuse for them to be part of an artistic expression, would you believe? That's highfalutin. But it gives them that. And young people especially, it's really good to see them making their own, they do paintings, they create little dramas, they write them. It's good.
When it was nearly going to be suspended in 1985, do you think without the support and the uproar that was caused by the fans that they wouldn't have carried on with Doctor Who?
I just think so, yes, yes. That and the fact that someone in America threatened to kill Michael Grade. If someone threatened to kill me, I'd bring it back, yes.
Have you got any memorabilia in your lounge?
Well, I do get stuff from, you know, Doctor Who fans. They sweetly give me presents of myself. So I've got lots of funny little, you know,
nice of them.
well, and delightfully made, you know, kind of models of myself. My sons take them home and fire darts at them when they're really angry at me.
What do they think of Doctor Who, your son?
Well, they enjoy it. I mean, they enjoy the programme. They didn't watch it before I got the part. Well, that was because it was taken off when they came to the age of becoming hooked by Doctor Who, and so they never got into it until I arrived.
Do they
I think
ever
they're
give
quite
you?
pleased.
Do they ever give you any tips or advice?
Oh yes, they do sometimes give me advice. You know.
Like what?
Well, you know. My youngest son gets slightly embarrassed at my overacting sometimes.
Really? And do you watch it at home yourself?
Well, yes, I'm the only one that hides behind the couch when I come on.
Not the Daleks.
Not the Daleks, no. It's just when I come on, I'm hidden behind the couch.
Right, well, you like me when
Am
I was
I?
little, with the Cybermen and the Daleks. Still, well, as it must be clear by now, Doctor Who mania can strike at any age. We caught up with two fans still at school in the sixth form. They wanted to share their excitement with others, so they took on the older fans and decided to run their own convention in their school at Abingdon.
This must be the place.
The convention has attracted all sorts of people. I got the idea from the convention. I had a dream. I just woke up in the middle of the night and wrote it down, and then I told a lot of people, oh yes, I'm going to organise a Doctor Who convention. And of course, by the time I'd told that many people, I had to do something about it, and so I did. There's been a lot of things involved in organising it. Quite a lot of things have gone wrong. It's been difficult, but it's been fun. Unfortunately, when the Daleks came out of the great big sliding door, they kept bumping into each other because they couldn't see where they were going. Then for the TARDIS that was meant to materialise with us in it, of dry ice, amongst a magnificent cloud of dry ice and flashing lights, whoever was operating the dry ice machine had some problems, and instead of going down and covering up the TARDIS being pushed on, the dry ice all went up and sort of almost choked the person operating the machine.
Right, we've got a whole day of stuff lined up for you, and there seems to be quite a lot of you here, which is quite pleasing. It seems to be taking sort of more or less a year to organise this.
We're using, I think, somewhere around 56 lights or something, different lights, all controlled individually from the control room. Plus, we've got a lot of sound mixing equipment up there. It's attracted a lot of sort of media attention, partially because we're sort of so young. I mean, I'm 17 and he's 18. And to be organising something like this, people sort of say, well done, or else they say, well, is he doing this right?
Oh, look, it isn't Tom Baker.
The appeal of the conventions are just the fact that you have all sorts of people here, different walks of life, different age groups that all share a common interest. When you live at home, you talk to friends, and they all think you're a little bit mad. When you come here, you realise there are other people that share the same interest, so you don't feel quite so isolated.
I'm enjoying myself immensely. It's brilliant fun. I could do this all year round.
After the break, we've a Doctor Who trivia quiz to test 3 fans on our very own guide, Jon Turner. Stay with us and see if you can do better than the guests.